Hello everybody, it is Chris and I am doing the Makers Care We Can Make a Difference challenge. This is going to be supporting the Children's Miracle Network hospitals, and I encourage everybody else to go check out Steve Ramsey's video, which is in the link below. This year's topic is Make Time for Play, and this year I made a Lego table. This is my Lego table that is colorful, and I designed this for my daughter, and she really enjoys it. As you can see, currently using the Duplo style Legos. However, it does work with regular or Duplo Legos. Because you're using standard Lego style bricks, they are interchangeable, and this is a good table for all ages. As you can see, it can hold a ton of different Lego bricks and figures and things too. And my Lego table design features a 9-inch deep by 17 inches long storage container where you can store a ton of bricks. As you can see here, we just have thousands of these things, so plenty of storage. Anyways, I'm gonna get started and show you guys how I built this thing. We are gonna build a new one, this time in white for a family friend. And as you can see here, I am going to begin by ripping down a 2x4 into a 2x3, or precisely 1.5 inches by 3 inches, and this board here will become the legs of the table. I end up making 4 of these legs 15 inches tall. That's going to be completely up to you on how tall you want to make them. That won't make a difference in the design of this project. So if you're following along to make this table for yourself, feel free to make them a little taller or shorter if you desire. Next, you see me ripping down some 2x2s. You're going to need quite a few of these if you're going to design this table like I did. The 2x2s kind of sandwich that piece of plywood in the middle as well, which makes for a pretty cool look if you're going to do a multicolored table like I did for my daughter, or it works just fine if you're doing a white table like I'm doing in this video. Either way, you're going to want a lot of 2x2s, so make sure to use all of your safety best practices here when ripping these, or just go buy some 2x2s. They're not too expensive if you want to just go that route. Next, we move on to our cross cuts. So if you already have all your wood pre-ripped, or if you just ripped it yourself, it's time to cross cut all these pieces. There's a bunch you're going to make here, including the side backing, sides, tops. All these rips are going to be done either on a miter saw, or here you can use a crosscut sled or just a handsaw. Once you're done with all your crosscuts, time to go to the bandsaw. And on the bandsaw here, we're just going to cut a little corner out of the legs to give them a little decoration, make them look a little prettier. You don't have to be super accurate on this, as you can sand them down later. If you don't have a bandsaw, you can also do this just as easily with your normal handsaw or with a miter saw. You can just miter out a little edge, or you can just leave them straight. It doesn't matter. Here I'm measuring the plywood top. This is going to be 33 3/8 inches by 23 5/16 inches, and then the plywood boxes as well, the block sides and the plywood box base as well. I ripped all these down and very carefully made sure all these measurements were perfect. This is obviously very crucial when you're trying to make a nice tight fit on the top for all your Lego platforms to go in. So next, you're going to definitely want to make sure that you actually test the fit of the platforms. So as you can see here, the blocks sometimes have a bow to them. You can see on the right there, you can see a little bit of a bow, and I like to put that so that the bow is up. So that way the blocks aren't going to be, the platforms aren't going to be interfered with, and everything will be a nice tight fit still. Now that all your pieces are all cut, and your box is cut, and you made all your cuts, we're going to move on to first test fitting and making sure that everything lines up. As you can see here, making sure those edges line up perfectly is going to be absolutely critical. Make sure your bows are all up so that the blocks can get screwed in from the bottom. Here I'm going to clamp, glue, and then screw from the bottom the top of this board. You can see I'm testing the fit here and just making sure everything is all nice and square and even before I get the glue out. After you're feeling comfortable, you then go ahead and glue and clamp this project all together. I just use a little bit of glue You can use a ton if you'd like. I just don't like it oozing off the sides, and I don't think it's going to need a lot. So after you get everything all fit together and glued together and clamped, I then grab some construction screws. You can grab these at Menards or Home Depot. And I do some pre-drilling so that they'll be inset, and I just start to go to town and put some construction screws in. There's no rhyme or rhythm to this, really. I just make sure that there's enough on there to hold everything securely in place. Maybe about 6 to 8 screws on each board. I feel like now is a great time to talk about making this your own project. If you guys have an old coffee table or anything laying around and you don't want to do all this work to build the table, you can just use that and throw the Lego platforms on top, use some storage bins, and your kids would love it, I'm sure. But if you want to follow along with these plans, I'll leave as much of the info in the description as I can, and I'll also throw some links into where I got the platforms so that they can fit for you as well. Here, as you can see, I'm doing a lot of pocket holes for this project. Pocket holes are a simple, easy way to put together a project. If you want to look up more info on pocket holes, I'm sure you can find tons of videos out there. Steve Ramsey does the best job, if you ask me, so I'd follow his link in my description below and just search his pocket hole videos. So here I'd like to show you guys that you don't need to use pocket holes for this project. I'm just going to screw in right through. This is the bottom 2x2, and you can just screw right in through the bottom. And I am actually using a pocket hole screw because it actually has that extra little washer on it, which just really holds everything together nice and tight. Next, I'm going to perform a dado cut in the box for this project. This helps hold everything together nice and tight, but again, with this project you do not need to use dado blades. I just choose to use them because I have them and they work much better. Here I'm building the plywood box sides. These are 23 3/8 inches by 7 inches deep. The one in my beginning of my video here was 9 inches deep, but this one I felt like didn't need to be quite as deep. It'll also hold a little less Legos, but it will be a little more balanced. The box for my project is being held together with glue and pocket hole screws. To make sure that everything stayed nice and square and even, I had to use a wedge of some type, this being some extra scrap wood I had, and one of these paver blocks, and it worked very well to keep everything nice and straight. Again, if you don't have pocket holes or dado blades, it doesn't matter too much for this project. This is just making a box, so if you wanted to screw these in together through the edges, I would just recommend using a little bit more wood glue and go straight through the edges. And then the box on the bottom, I would put in a little thicker plywood. I would go for maybe a 1/2 inch thick plywood on the bottom of this box as well. Okay, so now that our box is made, it's time to put this thing together. I'd recommend pausing it at this point so that you guys can take a look at this actual setup. You can see where the legs all get screwed together underneath, and now these side pieces go in here. I would definitely recommend trying to do a toenail screw or something like that for the legs so that they're all hidden. The screws just look much better hidden than if they're on the surface. If you can't do that, you can throw one in the front and the sides of the legs as well, underneath, so that way everything is still nice and tight, but it might get in the way of actually fitting these sideboards in as well. With all these sideboards in the top board, or I should say the back board, you want to make sure that they're all very straight and even. That's why I made them very tight, is so I can get them in there nice and straight, knock them in there very even for this design. For it to work properly here, you want to make sure they're flat and flush against those back legs and front legs. I'm going to show you what the box looks like first, but first we're going to sand this whole project down. I used my random orbit sander. You guys can use normal sandpaper, just get it lightly sanded at least if you're going to paint it. If you were going to do the multicolored paint like I showed you in the beginning, you would want to paint every piece individually before you begin this project, before you even began putting them together. But anyway, we're talking about the white one on this video. So at this point, you're going to sand everything down nice and smooth. Make sure all the edges are nice and smooth so no little fingers get poked or pricked, and don't get any slivers. So here you will see that the whole table is now put together. You can see that the flat boards should be flush against the inside of the legs, and you can see how the legs kind of angle outward. So if we zoom in here and take a look, you can see that it creates a nice flush box. That will help hold our drawer in with the drawer slides that we're about to install in a few minutes. But first we have to paint the project. This time I'm doing a Glidden cheaper paint and primer in one. It did relatively well with the covering. I had to do about 3 coats for this project to end up looking pretty nice. And then some very minor touch-ups here and there. Of course, before we painted, we sanded everything down, and I did do some wood filling with some wood putty as well. This paint held on pretty great. It was only about $10 through their sale or rebate sale that they had going on at Home Depot. This is what it ended up looking like after just the first coat. And again, I laid it on a little thicker, but it turned out pretty great. And here in the project, you can see where that plywood just soaks up some of that paint. I had to do some touch-ups here, as well as quite a few touch-ups on the inside of the drawer. But overall, I feel like this paint did a pretty good job, especially for the price. Here you can finally see what the final paint project is starting to look like. It's starting to turn out really nice. After we let this dry, we're going to go ahead and install the brackets to hold the drawer in. To install any drawer slides, make sure to follow the manufacturer's recommendations. I'm going to set a link to the Amazon product page for the ones that I install here because it just simply works. I ended up following some of the instructions, but I ended up reversing them because I had my drawer slides up a little higher than you're supposed to. Either way, it worked out well for this project. Just follow the instructions as they say it, and make sure that if you get some at Home Depot or Menards, you follow the package very carefully. After you get the brackets installed, you just push the drawer into the slots and you're good to go. Next, it's time to install the Lego base plates. I used this epoxy at first and it did not work as great as construction adhesive. I would greatly recommend getting some construction adhesive as it's much cheaper and it applies a lot easier than this epoxy. The epoxy didn't just get into those grooves like you can see on the Lego base plates. It probably would have worked much better on traditional, regular, original Lego brand base plates, but these ones just have a much thicker, better feel, and the designs are based around these, whereas the Lego base plates don't quite fit together perfectly. If you do end up using the epoxy, I would recommend applying it to the table lightly first, and you're going to need about 3 total packages of these to get these base plates to stick. It does work very well on plastics compared to some construction adhesives, but I feel like the construction adhesive just gets into those grooves better and really holds those plates on. Make sure when you're spreading this out you have gloves on or some type of protectant because, or use some sort of brush or something because you don't want this on your fingers. And here you can see I switched to construction adhesive after I got those first 2 base plates on. It ends up working out much better and just holding those Lego boards much better. It's thicker and it's much cheaper actually too. I think that this construction adhesive costs about $6, but you can get construction adhesive for about $2 or $3. So here you can see me laying the actual base plates, and it kind of sticks up a little bit, so make sure to give a good amount of pressure when you're laying these down and use those Lego bricks as spacers so that you know for sure that everything is connected perfectly. That way everything stays nice and square and all the pieces will connect together. Make sure to remove them from the epoxy and lay some sort of heavy objects on everything before this starts to cure. Here you can see I just threw a bunch of heavy stuff on top of here. Make sure it's all spread evenly so all the pieces are nice and tightly held together. And finally, the last thing we had to do was install a knob on the front here. To do this, you just find the middle on each side and the top to bottom, and then you just screw the knob through the hole. And there you have it, you guys. That is how you build the Lego play table that I designed for this year's Maker's Care Make Time for Play project. And I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial on how to build it. It was a lot of fun building this. I'm super excited to give this as a gift. If you guys have any more questions about Maker's Care, or if you have any questions about this project, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks for watching, everybody.